It was painful to watch. Two gaffes, both hard to witness, but it is the underlying sense of everyone holding their breath for another one that makes it so difficult now for the president to survive as the candidate.
Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be Vice President.
As the day has worn on, more leading Democrats are joining the ranks of those publicly asking him to step down. But tonight, President Biden is still insisting nothing has changed. For how much longer, though? Dan will assess the weekend ahead for us in just a moment. Also on News at 10 tonight.
I don't understand what's happening in this country.
It can't go on. Robert assesses the mood of voters in a key swing state. With the prisons on the point of collapse, the new government announces there will be a raft of early releases. Philosophical as ever, Gareth Southgate says England are ready.
We've held our nerve, held belief, and during which we've improved and learned as a team. So everything else on a personal level is irrelevant.
Tomorrow, we return to the concrete pitches where he honed his skills.
This is ITV News at 10 with Tom Bradby.
Good evening. On the face of it tonight, Joe Biden has doubled down even more strongly on his determination to run for re-election this autumn, despite another round of embarrassing and very public blunders. In the last hour, he's arrived in Michigan, one of a trio of battleground blue-collar states generally seen as vital to hopes of a Biden victory. The problem, though, is more with the now fast multiplying concerns he's left behind in Washington after his bizarre mistakes at the NATO summit last night. Most particularly, of course, referring to President Zelensky of Ukraine as President Putin, not to mention suggesting Donald Trump was his vice president, which would be news to all concerned. Fears that at 81, Mr. Biden may simply no longer be up to the job are prompting increasing numbers of top Democrats and party backers to call on him to step down from the race.
As Joe Biden headed to the battleground of Michigan tonight, there are plenty wondering if the real fight lies in Washington among his own. It's not just an election he's facing, but a growing rebellion from within his own party. A revolt sparked by his disastrous debate performance, now turbocharged by this diplomatic clangor for the ages.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. We're going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President.
I'm better.
You are a hell of a lot better.
The reaction of the German Chancellor here on the bottom right epitomised the incredulity sweeping the summit.
Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. We're going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky.
And it didn't take long for President Biden's solo appearance to serve up another excruciating name mix-up.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be Vice President, but I think she was not qualified to be President.
The questioners were hand-picked by the White House, but there really was only one subject.
Your political future has hung over the NATO summit.
Officials here are saying off the record that your decline has become noticeable.
It is not your enemies who are calling on you to reconsider your decision to stay in the race. It's your friends.
I'm not in this for my legacy. I'm in this to complete the job I started.
If this was designed to be a forceful rebuttal of his critics, it was distinctly underwhelming.
The only thing age does is help you with it, creates a little bit of wisdom if you pay attention.
And there was precious little sign he's willing to listen to the dissenters inside his party.
Would you reconsider your decision to stay in the race?
No, unless they came back and said, there's no way you can win. Me. No one's saying that. No poll says that.
The press conference yesterday was fine. That's not good enough.
Che Komanduri worked for both the Obamas and the Clintons. He reflects the deep dissatisfaction within the Democratic Party.
We need the Joe Biden from 2020 every single day. We need him constantly there. And I am having my doubts whether we'll ever see the 2020 Joe Biden again. I think a lot of Democrats are as well.
Doubts which are spreading inside the party with every passing hour. Dan Rivers, News at 10, Washington.
Apart from anything else, the whispering thing. It's just very strange. Now, it's in states like Pennsylvania, another of that must-win trio, that the problems affecting Joe Biden could have a decisive impact. These are places where, as we found out, questions about whether he's up to the job are now weighing heavily on the minds of voters. Questions that might well determine the future of the Biden campaign and indeed the Democrat one.
This election will be decided in just a handful of places. Among them, the crucial battleground state of Pennsylvania. And in small towns like Gettysburg, for centrist Democratic voters like Elaine Henderson, the struggles of Joe Biden are a source of deep anguish.
So what next for the Democratic Party? What happens?
I don't know. I don't know. It's very upsetting.
I mean, this is a decision that's driving some Democratic voters like you to tears.
Yeah. The situation with the Supreme Court. I mean, I don't understand what's happening in this country.
At a nearby festival for bikers, flocking here from across the region, there is a sense of sadness that an aging president has put the country in this predicament.
Like with any job, you retire. It comes to the part where it's at the end, and then you sit back and hand the baton to somebody else and let them go with it. I'm not saying he could never advise that person if another Democrat wins, but his time to be the head honcho, I feel, is over.
Joe Biden launched his campaign for re-election earlier this year from the old Civil War battlefields of Pennsylvania, warning that he was the only candidate who could unite the country, evoking images of the Civil War. But few now see him as a unifying figure.
I don't think he should run. I don't think he's showing the ability to lead our country.
Not that he's too old, but I don't see him doing 4 more years. Not for the country, not for the United States. And the whole world, I think, personally, is laughing at us.
There is another reason why this is such an acute crisis for Democrats. For even if Joe Biden does step aside, very few voters appear to believe there is a credible alternative. Is there anybody else on the Democratic side who you could vote for?
No.
What about Vice President Harris?
Oh, no. Oh, no. Nope, nope, nope.
I mean, what's your opinion of the Vice President, Kamala Harris?
Not capable.
That simple.
The president is facing an adversary that he cannot beat, the reality of old age. And polling shows this remains an overwhelming concern for voters. Robert Moore, News at 10, Pennsylvania.
Well, let's go back to Dan now. Dan, as we heard in Robert's report there, quite a fix the Democrats, indeed, arguably anyone who doesn't want to vote Trump in America is in. Where do we think President Biden and his candidacy is tonight? Can he really stick it out much longer?
Well, he's certainly trying to, Tom. I mean, right now he is out campaigning in Detroit. The show must go on seems to be the message. But, you know, there's no doubt he's having some pretty tricky phone calls and meetings with various factions within the Democratic Party. We know that he had a meeting with the most senior Democrat in the House of Representatives, Hakeem Jeffries, putting out this rather cryptically worded letter confirming that the meeting had happened last night, saying that he expressed the full breadth of insight, heartfelt perspectives and conclusions about the path forward. A bit of a word salad. What does it mean? Well, I think he gave him a reality check and said, look, the number of people inside the party who are now rebelling is growing day by day. The last count I took before I came to this live shot was 21 now. Democrats have gone public to say Joe Biden is too old, he must stand aside. Added to that, there are key donors now saying we're not going to give a penny more. Donors like Abigail Disney, the heir to the Disney fortune.
Dan, I know it's a big if still, but if he does decide over this weekend, next week sometime, that, OK, it's over, will it be Kamala Harris? Could it be someone else? What happens next?
Well, then we're just getting into a really tricky situation for the Democratic Party. It would be very difficult, perception-wise, for it not to be Kamala Harris, for him not to endorse the vice president. But the problem is, as you've heard in Robert's report there is deep scepticism among the party faithful about her abilities, about whether she really could take on Donald Trump and beat him. But it would be also very difficult for them to overlook the first female president, the first woman of colour to occupy the White House. So a really difficult fix for them, one that they're going to have to deal with very quickly, because the Democratic National Convention is coming up in, 5 weeks. They've got very little time to decide what Joe Biden is going to do.
OK, Dan, thank you very much. And Dan and I had a cracking extended conversation earlier for a special episode of Talking Politics USA, where we discussed, of course, the future of Joe Biden and indeed the Democrat campaign at some interesting, intriguing length. You can find it on ITVX or download as a podcast. OK, back here, thousands of prisoners are to be released early as an emergency measure to try to alleviate what Sir Keir Starmer's new government says is a crisis of overcrowding. According to the latest figures, barely more than 600 places are available in the adult male prisons of England and Wales, which the government says leaves prisons on the point of collapse, with the prospect of a total breakdown of law and order. What's not so clear is how the freed prisoners will be supported, or what measures might prevent this happening again.
Britain's prisons are bursting at the seams. They could be full within days. And just a week into the job, the new Justice Secretary has had to make big decisions fast. From September, to free up cells, some prisoners will be released after serving 40% of their sentences. The cost of inaction, she warned, is huge.
In short, if we fail to act now, we face the collapse of the criminal justice system. Let me be clear, this is an emergency measure. This is not a permanent change. I am unapologetic in my belief that criminals must be punished.
If thousands of prisoners are going to be released early, how on earth is the probation service going to cope? It's already struggling to monitor and supervise people.
Look, I've been talking to probation staff today, so I'm well aware of the difficulties that probation staff are facing. But if we don't do this, we face the collapse of law and order in our countries.
The plan is to recruit 1,000 new probation officers by 2025. Violent and sexual offenders will not be released early, but victims of domestic abuse are worried.
We can't have a system where we're fixing a crisis in prison places by putting victims at risk, so this has to be done really well.
In England and Wales, there's been a staggering rise in the prison population since the mid-90s, doubling from around 40,000 prisoners to more than 87,000 currently locked up. Right now, there are fewer than 700 spaces left in men's jails. HMP Leeds is one of Britain's most overcrowded prisons. Lee was released early from a short sentence this week.
I don't know how many numbers of people are in there, but it's full.
But he's stuck in a cycle of homelessness and offending.
They've released me 10 days early with nowhere to live, just to put me back on the street and take someone off the street and put them in there, so it makes no sense, does it? Well, I'm going to go and walk the streets till I'm recalled back to prison, innit?
Tackling reoffending is crucial to relieving pressure on prisons.
Longer sentences, court backlogs and a lack of investment in building new prisons have all led us to this point. These measures are a sticking plaster, a temporary fix. Longer term, much bolder, more radical reforms are needed.
And so the dog sniffed this stuff out?
These emergency measures will buy the government some time, but the situation remains critical. Sarah Corker, News at 10.
And Shihab is here to talk about all this. Look, the new Justice Secretary, pretty scathing of what she says is the mess left to her by her Tory predecessors, but this doesn't feel like anything like a catch-all solution. What do you make of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to sort of separate politics and policy here.
focusing first on the politics, this is a dreadful headline for any government having to release prisoners early. And you're right, the Justice Secretary has been very scathing of her predecessor. It reminds me of a lot of what we saw in 2010, the last time we had a party leave government and a new party come in when the coalition came in. And there was a lot of talk then by David Cameron and George Osborne of the mess that they inherited from the Labour Party. They framed a lot of their difficult decisions, as they put it, by saying they were cleaning up that mess. Labour's doing exactly that, and I suspect there'll be a lot of that over the coming months, if not years. When it comes to the policy, as you say, this is an emergency measure. Labour are very open about that, but the experts tell us they are just plastering over a long-term problem, that this will essentially buy them 18 months, but it doesn't fix the root of the problem, and that they need to reform the system altogether. Keir Starmer is clearly aware of that. He's hired in a prisons minister externally, someone who's supposed to be an expert, who's worked in this sector before, someone who is going to push forward that reform. What this policy has done is it's bought them time, but that time is going to need to be used to figure out exactly how that reform is going to work and how quickly it can be implemented.
That was very clear. Thank you very much indeed. Now, it was gruesome enough to begin with, but tonight the story of those 2 suitcases and their ghastly contents dumped on Bristol's Clifton Suspension Bridge has become, if anything, even more horrific. Police, who are still hunting the man suspected of leaving the cases, confirmed today that they contained the remains of 2 adult males. It's now believed they were carried to Bristol with their grim contents inside from London. The Met has now taken over the investigation.
This house in West London has now become the centre of an investigation into a gruesome and disturbing incident. Today, officers sealed off the area around the property in Shepherd's Bush. Later, a private ambulance was seen arriving after 2 suitcases were found containing human remains in Bristol. Police have been trying to track down this man for more than 40 hours, who they believe is linked to the horrific discovery. During the search for him, officers have arrested another 36-year-old man in connection to a shocking story that has now expanded across 2 police forces.
We're able to confirm forensic post-mortem examinations are still being carried out on the remains found within the 2 suitcases, but they are believed to be that of 2 adult men. The search for the man we released photos of yesterday is now being led by the Metropolitan Police. There is no information to suggest he remains in the Avon and Somerset police area.
Police believe the suspect travelled from London to Bristol on Wednesday. It's understood he then was picked up by a taxi outside the Mall pub in the Clifton area of the city that night and was taken to the Clifton Suspension Bridge.
Well, it was around midnight when it's believed staff working on the bridge saw the suspect carrying suitcases that eyewitnesses say were dripping with blood. And when confronted, they say he ran off on the other side of the bridge away from the city, leaving the suitcases behind.
With the bridge reopened, there's a reduced police presence in Bristol, with the focus now on London, where resources are being drawn from across the Met Police Force as it leads the manhunt tonight. Sangeeta Lal, News at 10, Bristol.
A close friend of one of the 3 women killed in that horrifying crossbow attack in Hertfordshire told us today that such weapons should be made illegal. The former partner of one of the women, Louise Hunt, was arrested today as he lay in a hospital bed on suspicion of murder. Speaking to Chloe, Mia Grono-Marty described Louise, killed alongside her mother and sister, as the most amazing friend.
Louise Hunt on the right and her friend Mia bonded over their love of dogs.
She was just so smiley. She just had such an infectious energy. Courageous, bubbly, loving, supportive. I could probably use every good word about her.
25-year-old Louise, her sister Hannah and her mum Carol were killed in their home on Tuesday. Louise's ex-partner, 26-year-old Kyle Clifford, has been arrested on suspicion of their murders.
Has she told you that she was worried about anything at all in the weeks leading up to her death?
No, just very confused about the whole situation. I think it's really hard to wrap your head around it.
You must miss her terribly already. Do you think you've begun to process what happened yet?
I don't think anyone has. I think, like how can you process something just so terrible?
Police say they've recovered a crossbow during their investigation. Mia says there must now be tighter regulation of a weapon that can be used to kill.
Quite frankly, I didn't even know they were legal. So I don't think anything that can kill someone or hurt someone should be legal.
Mia and Louise had booked to go on holiday together next month and had plans to travel the globe. Now Mia is contemplating a world and a future without her best friend. Chloe Keedy, News at 10, Hertfordshire.
More than 1,800 jobs are at risk tonight after one of Britain's biggest carpet retailers revealed it is set to enter administration. Carpetright operates 272 stores across the UK, specialising in carpets and flooring. The stores are currently continuing to trade as normal as efforts are made to try and save the company. The firm is thought to have suffered from generally weaker demand for carpets as well as a major cyber attack in April. Now, it is fair to say that for a manager who's taken England's men's football team further than anyone since the glory days of 1966, Gareth Southgate has taken a lot of stick. But with less than 48 hours to go before England's Euro 24 final showdown against Spain, he's dismissed all of that, calling it irrelevant. The important thing, he said, has been how the squad has held its nerve. Southgate did describe the tournament so far as an absolute rollercoaster. You can say that again.
It wasn't that long ago, if it had gone to a public vote, Gareth Southgate would have walked into number 10. That affection dipped earlier in the tournament, but has now warmed again, although Southgate has not been popping the champagne corks.
There was less of a celebration, perhaps, less satisfaction at reaching a final. I don't say it becomes run-of-the-mill, but it's a little bit more normal for us, and that statement in itself is probably a bit ridiculous given our history. So of course, yeah, in the end, what I do know is how we'll be viewed by others will be determined by the result on Sunday.
Contesting a final looked unlikely during England's group games. That was when Southgate needed his full metal jacket. Quite clear you've been hurt along the way. How much, if at all, has that spoiled your experience here?
Best I just focus on getting ready for the final, really. I understand the demands of the job. We've held our nerve, held belief, and during which we've improved and learned as a team. So everything else on a personal level is irrelevant. We're in a final, and we want to go that step further than we went 3 years ago.
Team here. So how do you beat them?
Yeah, we've got to make sure that tactically we're close to perfect, but every team has strengths and every team has some weaknesses, and our job is to be prepared for their strengths and to go and exploit their weaknesses.
The FA make no secret about wanting Southgate to stay, regardless of what happens this weekend. But will he? That's a conversation for another day.
Emotionally, it would be impossible for me to make a logical decision at the moment on any of that, because the last 5-6 weeks have been an absolute roller coaster. So I don't actually know where I am with anything other than very focused on preparing the team for this game.
The task for Southgate and his England is to set aside the enormity of Sunday's occasion and to find the game of their lives. Much easier said than done, of course. Steve Scott, News at 10, Blankenheim.
Few would doubt, though, that England's opponents in Sunday's final in Berlin will be by far their biggest test yet. Spain have been the form team of the tournament, winning all of their matches so far with some pretty dazzling attacking football. And at the heart of their success has been an outrageously talented 16-year-old from the barrios of Barcelona. It's actually Lamine Yamal's 17th birthday tomorrow. We went to Barcelona to speak to his dad, who confidently predicted a 3-0 win for Spain.
On the grassless pitches in one of Spain's most diverse neighbourhoods, schoolboys aspiring to be superstars now have a hero their own age who honed his skills here too.
Mine is my big dreams, you know what I mean?
But his father, a Moroccan immigrant to Spain, told me in a local bar where his son's signed shirt now hangs on the wall, he's a normal boy.
It's Lamine.
It's Lamine. He's a youngster. Sweet, kind, polite, respectful, ordinary. I could always see that he was a star. For others, I don't know, but to me he has always been a star.
His son had an early endorsement, bathed as a baby in the Barcelona dressing room by Lionel Messi. He was spotted and signed up to Barca's academy, aged 7. Now he celebrates his roots with his goals, depicting 304 with his fingers, the postcode of Rocafonda, where boys like Abdullah and Asier played with him.
It was difficult to defend him. His dribbling is incredible, that's it. And well, it's an example to follow.
Yeah, it brings me hope to finally reach my dream. It's to be one of the best goalkeepers in the world.
Yamal's journey from these concrete pitches to the world stage has been improbable, but also unstoppable. Already the youngest player to play in a Euros, to score in a Euros. Ominously for England, the obvious next step is being the youngest to win the Euros. His dad speaks to him every day. Is he worried about England?
No, we are going to win 3-0.
And do you think he will score?
I don't know, but we will win for sure.
As his son continues to inspire kids here, England will hope the next chapter of Yamal's fairy tale won't be written on Sunday. Ben Chapman, News at 10, Catalonia.
OK, well, if success breeds success, then victory tonight for England's Lionesses could be seen as a good omen. The Lionesses' 2-1 win over the Republic of Ireland at Carrow Road brought them closer to qualifying for Euro 2025. Alessia Russo scored their first after just 5 minutes. Now, finally, genuine sporting greatness is, of course, a very rare quality, but today England bade farewell to a true cricketing legend. Jimmy Anderson was given a guard of honour as he walked off the pitch at Lord's to a standing ovation, having played his last test. The single wicket he took in his final session as England crushed the West Indies is barely a footnote to an extraordinary career. His 704 test scalps make him both England's highest wicket taker and the game's most prolific fast bowler.
With England on the verge of victory after just 2 days of the 5-day test, Jimmy Anderson's farewell took centre stage at Lord's. Following a guard of honour from both teams, he soon added to his record tally of wickets with a typically teasing delivery. Oh, that is a beauty. His family joining the celebrations. This was Anderson's 188th test match. He'll be 42 later this month, but he still has the energy and appetite to throw himself around just to save a run or two. With only one West Indies wicket left to take, it was set up for the perfect finale. But he was denied the fairy tale ending his bowling partner Stuart Broad managed last year.
Jimmy Anderson, what have you done?
Instead, Gus Atkinson on his debut took his 12th wicket of the match, and Anderson departed with 704 test victims.
I'm still gutted I dropped that catch, to be honest. But yeah, it's been an amazing week. I've been quite overwhelmed with the reaction of the crowd and everyone around the ground and the lads as well.
His longevity is legendary. Only Indian batsman Sachin Tendulkar played more test matches. Only 2 spin bowlers, Muralitharan and Warne, took more wickets. He's aged a bit since he made his debut in 2003, but despite the huge effort required to bowl at pace over and over again, Anderson would happily have played on even longer. Instead, England's management urged him to retire at the top while they looked to the future. 4 wickets on his farewell, still capable of more. English cricket is toasting the end of a remarkable career. Ian Woods, News at 10.
True indeed. That is it for tonight. Have a really brilliant weekend from all of us here. Good night. Thanks for watching.